Welcome to this e-lecture, which will be about bivariate analysis and association between variables. And what is bivariate analysis of association between variables? Well, what we do is we look for statistical associations between two variables, and statistical associations imply that there are differences or inequalities between groups of individuals. And that is, do men on average have higher income than women? Do boys and girls make different educational choices? Does the suicide rate vary between weakly and strongly integrated members of society? And does health vary between groups with different socioeconomic status? So we are really looking for whether there are inequalities or differences between groups of individuals. And when we do bivariate analysis or analysis in general, we talk about the dependent and independent variable. It is the research question which defines the dependent and independent variable. If the research question is formulated as a hypothesis, then the cause is the independent variable and the effect is the dependent variable. And independent variable is supposed to cause or lead to variation in the dependent variable, whereas the dependent variable is supposed to vary depending on or under influence of the independent variable. So let's look at this. If we have, for example, gender, there are differences among men and women, whether they are trusting or not. And if that's our hypothesis, well, then the independent variable is gender and our dependent variable is trust. And it's important to clarify the temporal order, because the independent variable always have to come before the dependent variable in time. In this case, gender always comes before trust. Of course, that's not difficult to determine because there's an obvious time order. But whether social background creates a certain personality which then affects your attitudes and actions, that's not so obvious, or one might discuss whether it's actually personality that affects your social background, or maybe it's attitudes that cause your there might be many. There are many. There it's really much harder to determine the temporal order of these variables. So you can use obvious time order, or prior research theory, or longitudinal or experimental research design. But the thing is, you always have to make the argument that the cause comes before the effect in time, and that might seem a bit obvious, but it's really important to keep that in mind. And there are two distinct dimensions when we do the bivariate analysis or analysis in general, but it's important to note that these dimensions are connected, and it's more about a question about focus or our interest. So we can talk about descriptive statistics, which is establish whether there is an association or not between two variables in our sample, and establish how strong this association is. And the techniques we are going to use are comparing means, contingency tables, correlation analysis, and regression analysis. And then you have inferential statistics, which is really the question: can a sample result be generalized to the population? And if that is our focus, we use hypothesis testing, and we are testing assumptions about the population, and we're estimating the risk of establishing association, which is due to chance or sampling error. And of course, often when we want to establish whether there is an association or not, and how strong that association is, we want to test whether that this is actually whether we can generalize this to the population as well. So there's also of course these two dimensions are connected, but it's really, when we make this distinction, it's really a question about focus, really. Okay. So that was the e-lecture on bivariate analysis, association between variables. Thank you so much.